Jimmy Long says, Scotty, love your channel. I got a 2020 Honda Civic 2.0. How many miles should I go for the first oil change? It's a very good question. And what you want to do, you want to change your oil every 5,000 to 7,000 miles. Use full synthetic oil. Now, the first oil change, when I was a young mechanic, we'd say, go 500 miles, change the oil to get the metal fragments out. Modern engineering and metallurgy is much better. You don't have to do anything. Just treat it like a normal car. Change it maybe at 5,000 miles and just keep changing that way and use synthetic oil. And since it's a 2020, you know what my advice is? Use that new GF6A oil. It's made for those engines. It costs a little bit more. Now, any company sells it. You don't have to buy it from one particular company. It's a type of oil, GF6A. Buy that for your Honda. It's going to make it last longer. Here we go again with the Undyne and Kia. They now had to recall more than 425,000 cars for engine failures. Turns out they didn't build them right. They're warning their owners to look out for smells, odd noises, cars that aren't running right. Turns out they didn't make the connecting rods right inside the engine. Now, if you don't know that much about cars, there's pistons. They go up and down. All right? Then there's the rods. They connect the piston to the crankshaft. And if the connecting rods aren't made right and the bearings are off, they can throw a hole in the side of the engine. Not only could it start a fire, but of course the engine's going to come to a dead stop while if you're going 60 miles on a highway, your wheels are going to lock up in the back because it's going to just lock right up. Or if it's front wheel drive, the front wheels will lock up because the engine will stop moving. They've had problems with this engine forever, it seems. The ones they built in the United States, supposedly one of their machines in the machine shop was bad, and then metal fragments are going inside the engines. This is a big reason I tell people not to buy those things. Now, the odd thing is, which the consumers are complaining about, they recalled some of the engines, but not all of them. Even though some models have the same exact engine, they're recalling some of those models and not some of the other ones, even though they have the same exact engine in them. So it shows you that Kia and Hyundai, they're not standing behind their products. They're trying to hide it. They're fighting it tooth and nail. They don't want to have to put new engines in all these cars because it's going to cost them a small fortune. Well, do you want to be stuck with a vehicle that has an engine that blows up while you're driving down the road and maybe starts on fire? No. That's why I tell people, Kia and Hyundai, hey, they may talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. They don't make the greatest vehicles. They have a history of engine problems. I personally would not buy one. Some people like them. They last a certain amount of time. But with problems like that, I think better things to do with my money than have to waste it on an engine or wait on a company that decides, well, you know, your car's got the same engine as the one we recalled, but we're not recalling your car. Total nonsense. Jesus Garcia got an 05 Mustang 4.6 V8. It turns off unexpectedly and won't start sometimes. Mechanic couldn't find the problem. Let's hope it stops and then doesn't start for quite some time, because if that's the case, you can watch my video fixing a car that cranks but doesn't start. And when it isn't starting, you can find out what it is. Could be the fuel pump, could be the ignition system. Now, if it normally will die but then it starts right up, that isn't going to work all that well. The way that a real mechanic does it, and your mechanic obviously either isn't real or he doesn't care. A mechanic like myself will drive it with our fancy scan tool hooked up. Then when it dies, I push a button. It memorizes back 45 seconds, and I can see exactly what went out. It could be the fuel pump. That's common. It will start to go out. Could be the ignition system going out. Could be the computer going out. Let's pray it doesn't start for quite some time. Then you can watch the video and do all those tests and figure out yourself. Just as a wild guess, I'd say fuel pump because you said it's, It's a 16-year-old Mustang. Odds are the fuel pump's just going out. It's a very common thing and it'll knock them out. Jim Rose says, what can cause a shaking steering wheel? Well, lots of things can. Let's say you're driving down a road and you hit bumps and it shakes. That's normally your shocks or struts are worn out. Let's say it doesn't shake until you hit the brakes and then it shakes. That means your front rotors are warped and the pads are warped. And when you hit them, it'll go like that. And of course, if you have out of balance tires, when you get to a certain speed, you get what's called a speed wobble, and that makes the steering wheel shake. Those are the main ones. But occasionally, it's relatively rare. If your front end alignment is off, occasionally that can make the steering wheel shake too. It's a rare one, maybe 2 out of 100, but it can happen. DeAndre Richmond says, Scotty, I just purchased a used 2014 Dodge Charger with 43,000 miles. I may be paranoid, but I think there's a slight ticking noise when it's idle. Hemi ticker is just the Hemi. All right, well, you have a tick, and it is the Hemi engine. They designed those things wrong back then in 2014. They made it for more power, and what they did was your cam used to be lower, closer to the crankshaft. The crankshaft would throw oil on it and lubricate it. Well, they decided for more power to move the cam up higher. So at lower idle speeds, the oil doesn't get splashed up and they wear and make noise. The older ones didn't do it, but the newer ones did because they changed the design. And so you get a tick in that. I can guarantee your lifters are probably starting to go from lack of lubrication that it also can wear the cams. But most guys live with it because if you do have to replace the cams, all the lifters, you're looking at least a $5,000 job with any honest mechanic. So you might live with it, change your oil a lot more, maybe try the best oil you can, a really good synthetic oil, see if it helps a little. Nicholas Hall says, Scotty, VW is selling their diesels from Dieselgate, lots of low mileage cars. Do you recommend these diesels since drivers in Europe seem to love them? Okay, newer owner realize in Europe, they're talking about making diesels illegal in the future. So in Europe, maybe not a smart idea. But in the United States, so one thing about Volkswagens, their diesel engines can last a long time. I got a friend in Toronto, he's got 350,000 miles on him. The Dieselgate was because they polluted more. They actually ran better. But they cheated and they polluted more. They're good engines. I'm not a Volkswagen fan, but if you can get a cheap, low-mileage diesel, it can last quite some time with very little maintenance if you just change the oil regularly. But don't overpay. And since, they're Dieselgate, they had to buy them back, they're probably going to ask way too much money in the first place. Realize, Volkswagens in the United States, their resale value, practically nothing. So don't pay much for one, even if it is a diesel. Tom's Adrian's Kublin says, what do you think about chip tuning? I got a 2004 BMW 320D. I paid 80 pounds and it's powerful and economical. Well, you're obviously in England. You're talking pounds. And really, there's hardly any diesel BMWs over here. Here is the thing. A lot of things are in your mind because you can't get more power and better gas mileage. You're going to get one or the other. You can get them tuned so they have more power, but you'll get worse gas mileage. And vice versa. You can tune them so they get better gas mileage, but they'll have less power. You're kind of imagining things there. Those get good gas mileage because they're diesels anyways. But you can only do one or the other. You can't do both. It's pure physics. As my old physics professor, Mr. Philby, said, in physics, you can't get something for nothing. He's long gone, but the idea still fits. Predfall says, Scotty, just bought 09 RX 350. Kind of regret because states are pushing electric or hydrogen. Don't regret. Those are great cars, and this is all future nonsense. Some of them say, well, by 2030, we're going to only let you buy electric cars. Yeah, buy electric cars. Buy. They're not saying you can't drive your gasoline cars. They're just saying you can't buy a new one. It's going to be a long time before gasoline cars are out of the roads in the United States. There's too big of an infrastructure. Nobody knows what kind of electric cars are even going to make it. It might not be the Tesla lithium-ion battery electric cars. It might be hydrogen fuel cell ones that you fill up just like a propane tank, and you don't have to buy those expensive batteries. The biggest mistake today, as far as I'm concerned, would be buying an electric car today and find out that, the lithium-ion battery cars failed. They're going to be hydrogen fuel cells. I bought the wrong one. Or, conversely, I bought a fuel cell car. Oh, and now they're never going to have fuel, so that was a waste of money. Don't worry, you didn't make a mistake yet. Bill Pate says, I got an 87 Chevy R10 with the throttle, PI injection. Runs rich. Any suggestions? Well, those old ones that had the throttle body and the injectors were in it. What the heck? Go to any discount auto parts store. You probably got the one that has 2 fuel injectors. Buy the fuel injectors and the seals. They'll come with directions. And it's very easy to replace the throttle body injectors. They don't cost that much. Do that and you'll probably find that'll fix most of the problems. They get old. They just don't work right. They weren't that efficient to begin with. That's why instead of having the throttle body injectors, they're now 1 for each cylinder instead of 2, 1 for each side, like a V8. One side had one, the other side had another. It's much better to have an injector for each cylinder. That's why they don't use that system anymore. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.